Preparing the database environment. In this nugget, we start with looking at the planning requirements for laying down the Oracle binaries. What do you want to look at as far as system requirements, licensing requirements? What do you want to get out of installing Oracle 11g? The centerpiece of this nugget, though, is installing the software. By the end of this nugget, you'll not only understand all of the necessary prerequisite steps, but you'll understand how to use the Oracle Universal Installer, or OUI. This is the Java application that engineers the Oracle installation. Let's get to work. In order to shorten your learning curve and get you up to speed with Oracle database technologies as quickly as possible, I plan to sprinkle this training with website recommendations as well as recommendations to good Oracle textbooks. Please know that any site or book that I recommend to you is one that I have either used quite a bit, as is the case with this site that I'm about to show you, or a book that I actually own and have read in most cases cover to cover. To that end, the first good site I'd like to share with you is the Oracle Forum website. You can find this at forums.oracle.com. As I mentioned in the previous nugget, it's clear that a developer designed this forum. It's pretty cumbersome. You're just seeing the first screenful of forums. As you see, Oracle has broken down the forums. If you've never used discussion forums, these are simply places where you can post questions or research question and answer sets to both learn more about Oracle as well as solve troubleshooting problems. The way the forums are designed is not only by technology, database, middleware, development tools, but there's also other subcategories within that match to specific products. The reason why I think this is a good site for you is because it's an online community actually, where you can interact with Oracle professionals from all over the world, and definitely you will find folks from all over the world. Oracle is a global product. And also, frankly, because it's free. As we'll go along, you'll find that in order to really get into Oracle as far as buy-in, corporate buy-in, you're going to have to shell out quite a bit of money for licensing. And the forums at oracle.com is, like I said, one of the few free resources that Oracle gives you. Please check it out when you get a chance. Now, let's take a look at some planning questions. First of all, why would you want Oracle database? There's many different reasons for this. You might have a line of business or lab application that relies upon Oracle database as its back-end data storage. Line of business applications are simply applications. In most cases, they run in a web browser. They're what are called N-tier applications that solve some business problem and automate business processes. Now, as far as lab applications, you could have custom homegrown lab applications that your own company's developers build, or you could take a consumer off-the-shelf or COTS line of business application. Oracle has several application server products that they'd be more than happy to license to you that you can use directly, like PeopleSoft is a good line of business application for human resources management, or you could just use the Oracle application server and customize it to kind of take some of the blood, sweat, and tears out of building a lab system from the ground up and make use of Oracle's work and just customize it, as I said, to your needs. Now, I'm going to presume that you know that your company needs Oracle, and then from there we can come to question 1 on this whiteboard. Which edition of Oracle? Now, Oracle is freely downloadable, as you're going to see, and that's important for you as students because I want to make sure that you download the software yourself and you install it in a virtual machine and you're able to play along with me as I do my demos and labs with you. When you license Oracle, you're going to be license bound to a particular edition. Now, the difference between editions of Oracle 11g deal with the extent of their feature set. You don't want to overbuy. If you don't need Enterprise Edition, if you're not that big of a shop, if you're not planning on using a lot of the bells and whistles that the Enterprise Edition gives, then you might want to spend less money for licensing and get, say, the Oracle Database 1, etc. That having been said, please don't go the cheap route and underbuy, because then if you realize as you gain your sea legs and you gain your mastery and familiarity with Oracle, and you realize 6 months or a year down the road, you know, we really do need that flashback technology, and that's going to involve an extra bump because you'll need to reinstall a higher edition of Oracle. So this certainly brings in financial issues, and it requires you to understand the difference among those Oracle editions. We'll take a look at those in just a moment, actually. Second question is system requirements. Does your existing hardware support Oracle? Does that hardware have an operating system that's compatible with Oracle? Oracle? Chances are yes, at least as far as the OS is concerned. The system requirements for Oracle, which again we'll take a look at in detail in just a moment, aren't all that aggressive when you compare it to other enterprise-class relational database management systems, but I like to tell folks, wherever possible, the more the better. And by more, I mean more hardware resources, stuff like RAM, CPU power, hard disk space, as well as hard disk speed, and of course network connectivity. Finally, we have the question of prerequisite steps. Now, you're going to find a world of difference in the ease of installation, depending upon whether you're using Linux as your host operating system or Windows. Oracle definitely does invest heavily in the Windows platform. Now, you're going to come across some old crusty Oracle DBAs who are firmly committed to Unix or Linux, and that's fine. I am the last person to get involved in an operating system war. I am very familiar. I have expertise with Linux. I have expertise with Mac OS, which is at its core Unix, and I have expertise with Windows. I enjoy the pluses and minuses of each platform. But as I said, some old crusty old-timers might say, well, Windows is kind of an afterthought for Oracle. Go with Linux. Not so fast. If you already have expertise with Windows, I would think there's nothing wrong at all with deploying Oracle database on a Windows server. The steps to configure your pre-installation requirements for Oracle on Linux are much more robust. I would say almost exponentially, as is the case with most Windows installers. Things like environment variables and installation directory choices and file system security issues, a lot of that stuff is abstracted from you as the software installer. So the choice of the operating system is beyond the scope of the course, but you have things to consider like operating system users and groups. We're going to get into this more as we go along, but who's installing the installation? Which account? Are you creating a dedicated account? And the answer to that should be yes. Oracle involves a couple built-in operating system groups. You have your DBA group that are going to have full database administrator privileges of the instance, and then you have your operator group, which is a sub-administrative group that doesn't handle the data but handles the machine, database backup and restore, those kind of issues. Finally, we have the issue which is related to the OS users and groups issue, file system security and provisioning of resources. Now, hardcore information security folks will say that there should always be a division of labor between database administrators and systems administrators. And the reason for that is auditing. We want to be able to audit what the DBA does. And if the DBA is the systems administrator and that DBA is dishonest, it's possible for this person to steal from the company and cover his or her tracks. So depending upon the size of your environment, you may have to request of your systems administrators hardware and software resources in order to get Oracle down. And that can involve, depending upon the size of your organization, a fair amount of meetings, a fair amount of bureaucracy until you get all of those ducks lined up in the proverbial row. Oracle 11g editions. This is just a briefest summary on this whiteboard. There are four main flavors or editions of Oracle 11g database. The Max version, which is most expensive of course, is the Enterprise edition. This has all of the bells and whistles, all of the optional features. If you don't need all of those features, the next tier down is Oracle 11g Standard. The main limitations as we start working our way down the licensing and edition spectrum, besides the features that are included in that edition, you'll also start to see some hardware caps introduced. Now, Standard is cool for a lot of people because Standard actually supports clustering. Oracle's database clustering solution is called RAC, Real Application Clustering. We're going to flirt around just a little bit with RAC as we go through the course, but that's largely an OCP level topic and not an OCA one. The chief hardware limitation of Oracle 11g Standard is that your servers are hard-coded to 4 or fewer CPU sockets. Now, if you're familiar with hardware, which I hope you are, remember the difference between a core and a socket. A socket is a physical, socket on your computer's motherboard into which a central processing unit is affixed. A CPU die, in contrast, can have one or more arithmetic logic units, or brains, or cores, whatever you want to call it. So if you have, say, quad-core processor dies and you have 4 sockets, then under Oracle 11g standard, you could have the effect of a 16 CPU box. That's pretty good, actually. Further down, we have Standard Edition 1. This Oracle likes to posit as a very cost-effective solution. We need to remember that with Oracle 11g, we're not only paying for the server license, but we're also paying licenses per user. Here, we have a maximum of 2 CPU sockets per machine. And then finally, we have the free Oracle 11g Express. This is free, no licensing, it's redistributable, and it has a relatively small footprint. Now, why would you use Express? The 2 main scenarios for Oracle 11g Express are development, testing, and learning. I'll consider that one reason, even though it's got 3 parts. And the second is redistributable applications. You might want to sell your own line of business application, and you may want to bundle Oracle database with that application. Now remember, this is a small footprint database that has plenty of restrictions. It has RAM restrictions, CPU restrictions. Similar kind of deal in the Microsoft SQL Server world. Of course, SQL Server 2008 has different editions, including Standard, Enterprise, and Express. And Microsoft does a similar kind of thing with cutting down the maximum database size, the maximum amount of addressable RAM when you get down to this level. But Express can be nice for smaller line of business applications. I want to take you out onto the Oracle website. This is a page called Oracle Database 11g Editions. It's under the Products and Services Oracle Database section of the website. And this is nice because it gives you just more information. A lot of it's kind of marketing info, at least up on top it is. But the main centerpiece of this web page that I wanted to show you is this extended table that gives you a blow-by-blow description of the key features per edition. And you'll notice right at the very top we have, for the Express edition, 1 CPU, 1 gigabyte of RAM, and a 4 gigabyte database size. That might be fine for very small line of business applications, but anything larger than that, you're going to want to pay out some money. And then, as I said, we get down into the specific options of the table. So that's a page you might want to take a look at. System requirements. We want to make sure that our machines have the necessary hardware horsepower to support Oracle. Now, Oracle runs on all major operating systems, as I said before. The 2 chief ones that we're concerned with are Microsoft Windows and what I'm referring to as NIX. What you'll sometimes see in literature is star NIX, with star, the asterisk, denoting a variable, Unix or Linux. You should know for your exam that Oracle 11g comes in both 32-bit and 64-bit varieties. Nowadays, most or all processor platforms are going 64-bit for 2 main reasons. One is speed, and 2, the 64-bit memory address space means that we can pack a lot more than 4 gigabytes of RAM in each piece of hardware, which is the hard-coded limit in 32-bit machines. As far as specific operating system versions, you'll find recent versions of Windows supported, and what I want to draw your attention to specifically is that you can install Oracle 11g, even the Enterprise Edition, not only on Windows Server, for instance Windows Server 2003, Windows Server 2008, but also client OSs. Now, installing Oracle 11g on a client such as, say, Windows XP or Windows 7 is not recommended unless you're a developer. There's many reasons for that. Oracle officially doesn't support the installation of the database on Windows 7, and you have to remember, client operating systems are not intended for heavy multi-user access. In Windows world, Microsoft has historically imposed a 10 connection limit on client operating systems, and outside of a small development environment, that's simply unacceptable. The 3 major variants of NIX on which Oracle is supported are Linux. You have your traditional business Linux like Red Hat Enterprise Linux. As I said before, Oracle has its own version of Linux. The Sun and now Oracle Solaris operating system. Oracle is like this huge behemoth purchasing its competition. For a long time, Solaris was, as you know, a Sun property. Now it has been absorbed by Oracle as well. Then we have HP UX, the IBM AIX. Those are old, still used Unix Unix distributions. The system requirements are pretty much the same regardless of your OS. We want at least 1 gigabyte of RAM. As far as your swap space or your virtual memory, also called the paging file in Windows environments, we need that file to be double the RAM. We need at least 5 gigs of disk space. Processors can be either of the two major players nowadays, Intel or AMD, and we also want to read the Oracle installation guide documentation to determine minimal acceptable patch levels for the OS. For instance, how would Oracle 11g behave under Windows Server 2008 Service Pack 1? Well, we're going to want to consult the primary documentation to that end. And to that end, you also should have bookmarked another site in the Oracle Technical Network. I would suggest you do a Google or Bing search for Oracle Database Online Documentation 11g Release 2, and this will take you to the page you're looking at right now. This is the root page of the Oracle Documentation Library. There's a separate documentation library not only for each version of Oracle Database, but for each release. The current release of Oracle 11g is Release 2. The version number is 11.2. Now, what is a release? We're going to talk about patching Oracle later in this course, but as Oracle deploys fixes, eventually those get rolled into releases along with additional features. You can consider a release kind of the equivalent of a Microsoft Service Pack. It gives you rolled up bug fixes as well as new and modified features, but the biggest deal from a business standpoint with releases is that they do not affect licensing. If we went from 11g to 12g, that would involve possibly a change in licensing cost. You don't have a bump to go from release 1 to release 2. Alright, enough about the release thing, but I figured that bore some explanation for you. The search facility up here is wonderful. You can search across all of the books. Once you become more familiar with the acronyms, you can jet through the library, which is very significant as you see here, and view those files in HTML, optionally download them as Adobe Acrobat portable document format PDF files. Now specifically, I want to draw your attention in this nugget to the installation guides. If we come down about halfway, we see a series of database install guides for those major OSs, HP UX, IBM AIX, traditional Linux, traditional Windows, etc. Those are big documents, especially, as I said, the Linux installation guide. The quick installation guides are much shorter, much more schematic. If you're a newcomer, then I would recommend you download or take a look at the full database installation guides. And the difference between Linux and Windows is pretty staggering. There is a lot to doing installation on Linux. Now, if you're already a Linux expert, it's not so bad. The good news from an exam standpoint is that we don't need to know how to do pre-installation or even installation per operating system. So as you're getting ready to take the test, if you're a Linux expert and you know nothing about Windows, or vice versa, you're a Windows person and you don't know much about Linux, don't really fret too much, if at all. Oracle does a good job of asking questions in a way that's operating system agnostic, and that's how I'm going to approach this training. Another technology with which you should be familiar, especially in terms of installing Oracle, is the Optimal Flexible Architecture, or OFA. Think of it this way, friends. If you're a DBA in a small shop and your shop has just a single instance of Oracle 11g, then maybe OFA isn't that important to you. After all, you know where all your directories are and what's in each of them. However, think of a larger distributed infrastructure, maybe a true grid infrastructure. The G in Oracle 11g stands for grid, and grid computing is where you can have a database spread across several pieces of hardware, where you can provision hardware, bring hardware resources up or down depending upon the data needs of the database. In that case, the file system of each of your servers becomes more important. Moreover, think of yourself as possibly an Oracle consultant someday, and you're going to different client sites to troubleshoot their Oracle 11g problems. It's going to be a lot easier if you have a consistent directory structure to get to the Oracle data files, to get to the Oracle binaries, to get to the alert files and log files. That's what Optimal Flexible Architecture is. OFA makes it easier for DBAs to manage multiple installations and possibly multiple versions of Oracle DB. That's what we're talking about here. And it has a specific syntax. If we come down to the bottom and take a look, I've given you both Unix paths and Windows paths here. You'll find almost always the initial mount point name in Unix Linux is some static identifier with an incrementing value. U is traditionally used with Unix Linux. So the first mount point where Oracle is installed would be U1. And then if you had another disk and another mount point where you were going to say multiplex some control files, you might have a U2, etc. In Windows, it's different. Our mount points, our volume mount points, are drive letters. So the drive letter tends to take the place of this identifier here. And then other than that, the pattern continues pretty consistently. You'll see some differences here. Oracle app versus app Oracle. Basically what you have here, and I'm going to choose the app Oracle way myself as we install very shortly, is a way to be as generic as possible while at the same time being as specific as possible. So under your mount point, you'd have an app folder that contains your Oracle products. Maybe you have another folder called util that has third-party Oracle utilities. You see what I mean? But traditionally we have mount point, app. Oracle in this case, believe it or not, doesn't denote the software, but denotes the user who owns the software, the installation account. So Oracle is just historically, traditionally the name of the user that we use to own the installation. And then under there we have product, and the idea there is you could have several products installed. You could have Oracle 10G installed side by side with Oracle 11.1 or 11.2, and then underneath the product, the name of your database, and then so on down the line. We don't need to know all the ins and outs of OFA, but I do need you to understand what it is. It's a consistent naming convention. There's plenty of information on this in the Oracle literature. This is a page from the Oracle Database Installation Guide for Linux where it discusses the optimal flexible architecture standard and shows you a bit how it works. It describes the naming convention, etc. Now, the OFA is a little bit less important when you start offloading your file system stuff to Oracle. There are features like OMF, this is called Oracle Managed Files, where you can tell Oracle, look, I want my data files and supplemental files stored in directory path X, and then you just can forget about that path. You don't have to worry about it. Nonetheless, OFA can be very helpful in a global Oracle way. Another thing that's crucial as a pre-installation step are setting environment variables. An environment variable is a variable. A variable is just a piece of data. An environment variable is a piece of data that is used in the context of a user session or a computer's session that are used generically. So Oracle _base is very, very important to Oracle installation, as is Oracle Home. These are environment variables that point to your OFA paths, either to the root of all installations on that server or to the root of a specific instance. So in this case, the Oracle base path might be U01 app Oracle, and you may have several versions of Oracle installed under that path. Those separate versions would be separate Oracle homes. Now, if you're coming from SQL Server, you might already be kind of lost. With SQL Server, you can bring up new databases in the same instance of SQL Server, almost like you're having daisies pop up out of a flower garden. It's not like that at all with Oracle. With Oracle, the database instance and the database itself are a one-to-one relationship. So the database is really all-encompassing. It's possible to have more than one database and more than one instance on a server, but you're going to want to have a really good reason to do that because it's just so resource intensive. So you have one Oracle base per server no matter what. You could potentially have more than one Oracle home depending upon how many Oracle instances you have installed. So examples of Oracle home would be U1 app Oracle product 1110 and then the name of your database. Moreover, you could have multiple databases under the same version. You see what I mean? That's the great thing about the consistency of the optimal flexible architecture. It provides a very at-a-glance way to see what's there on the server such that a consultant coming in can pop into the file system and within 5 minutes know exactly what's going on instance and database-wise. Operating system users and groups. As I said, Nix is much more of a manual process, so the specific steps for creating the operating system users and groups I will leave to your study in consulting the database guide. Windows installation is cool because the Oracle Universal Installer will provision the necessary operating system users, except for the software owner. Traditionally, the way folks install Oracle is that they're going to create a separate user account in the operating system. The traditional name for that account is Oracle, and we want to make sure that that account is least privilege. In Windows, of course, you have to be a local administrator to install software, but we want to be careful about not using that Oracle account for things other than software installation and software maintenance. We would use Oracle for the install and then log into the OS using our standard administrator or even regular user account. You'll find after the installation completes on Windows that the Oracle 11g installer has created a couple built-in Windows groups. As I said earlier, one is for the database administrators. Anyone belonging to that group becomes a DBA of that instance automatically, and the other is an operator group that's a sub-administrative group used for database maintenance. Now, those groups in Unix, Linux, you have to create those yourself. Environment variables, with Unix and Linux, you have to create them yourself using, say, the export command. With Windows, as I said earlier, a lot of those details are abstracted from you, and you'll find that your environment variables actually are contained in the Windows registry. You can still use the set command or the system properties sheet if you want to manually put in the Oracle home and the Oracle base and so forth, but you don't have to under Windows. The Oracle Universal Installer, also called OUI, is the main installation utility for installing and maintaining Oracle 11g database. Because Oracle Universal Installer is a Java application, it provides a consistent interface regardless of your application. It is, in fact, a GUI application. And I know some old school Linux people never like GUIs, but hey, that's what we have here. And what's nice from a learning perspective is that if you understand how the OUI works under Linux, you'll know exactly how the OUI works under Windows, and vice versa. Oracle gets a lot of mileage out of the OUI. We use it not only for installation of Oracle database, but we use OUI for uninstallation, patching, and upgrades. We're going to find a similar repetition when we look at creating databases with the Database Configuration Assistant utility, or DBCA. In Windows, we're all accustomed to launching a setup executable, and that's how it's done here with Oracle. Under Linux, you have a more traditional shell script called runinstaller.sh. Finally, this isn't covered on your exam objectives as such, but it's possible to script Oracle database installation by creating what's called a response file. An easy way to create a response file is to run through an installation and save all of your installation choices. That can be very helpful if you need to install Oracle Database 11g multiple times and you want to do that in an automated and consistent way. You simply launch either setup.exe or run installer with the silent and response file parameters and provide the path to that response file, and then OUI will proceed automatically, as an old colleague of mine said. That having been said, in the demo you're about to see, we're going to go through this step by step because it's important that we understand each screen of the OUI and what the ramifications of our choices are. If you do a Google or Bing search for download Oracle 11g, you'll come to this page in the Oracle Tech Network. In order to download the software, you're going to need to create an Oracle account. Remember, that's a free deal. You don't have to pay any money for that. And when we come to the Oracle Database Software Downloads page, let's take a look and see what options they give us. As of this recording, Oracle Database 11g Release 2 is the latest one, and then it's just a choice of our operating system. We have Z-Linux 64, Windows, 32-bit Linux, Solaris, AIX. We've been through all that. You can download the files separately, or what I tend to do is hit See All to be taken to an additional page that shows you all of the downloads for that operating system. Now you'll notice that just, I think, to cut down on the size of the files that are coming down from Oracle.com, they give you 2 zip files, 1 of 2 and 2 of 2. This confuses some newcomers as far as how to unzip those into the same directory. When you're brand new, stuff like that happens. I don't know why they didn't use Splitter, maybe using WinRAR, but whatever, nobody asked me. You have to accept the Oracle Technology Network license agreement in order to download this stuff. So this is what we need here. You want the database zips and bring those down to your hard drive. We also have additional software if you're interested in deploying automated storage management, ASM, which is something we will talk about as we go through this course. That is part of this grid infrastructure download. You have to install that separately. For your users on remote machines to access Oracle database, they need the Oracle client. There's the client. This is the largest client I've ever seen in my life, 615 megs. Wow. The examples are cool, especially for learning. These are sample schemas that you can incorporate into your Oracle database. Definitely wouldn't install these on a production machine. And Oracle even gives us a 107 megabyte deinstall utility. So all these are per operating system. You want to bring those down to your system. Here we are on a Windows machine. I've downloaded the Oracle binaries. So why don't I show you where those are now. Got them in a folder called Resources. And if we go in zips, we'll see that I've downloaded the Win64 version of Oracle Database 11G R2, 1 of 2 and 2 of 2. And what I did is simply right-clicked each one of them. We could use Windows Explorer's built-in extractor and choose Extract All, and you want to unzip or unpack the database zips into the same directory. So if I step back to Resources, I've unpacked all of that stuff into a folder called Oracle Server and in turn into a folder called Database. Now, let me open the Start menu. You see that I'm logged on as a local administrator named Oracle. This is the user account that is going to own the installation files. It's more important, the concept of account ownership of software installations in Linux, but it's still done here with Windows as well. As far as checking installation prerequisites, I trust you know how to get around in Windows or Linux. You could query meminfo and sysinfo in Linux under proc, or here you can open the computer management console. We're going to assume that this piece of hardware here, this Windows workstation, can support the installation of Oracle Database 11G. Now, once you unpack the database, in Linux you have the run installer script. In Windows you have an actual setup executable. You probably can't see it, but there's a user account control shield here, which means we'll need to elevate using our administrator token to install the software. There's also a welcome.html web page, and what this is an offline version of the product documentation. In fact, you see a link here that can take you directly to the OTN documentation site that I showed you a little bit earlier, but I want to draw your attention over onto the right hand side. You get a subset of the Oracle documentation. Now, if you hover over the links, you'll notice in the status bar, these resources are all local, so you do not need internet access to read these. However, in my experience, I always go to the website. This way you're making sure that you get the very latest versions of those files. Let's, without any further ado, start the installation. I'm going to right-click Setup Exe, select Run as Administrator to elevate my credentialing, and you'll see from this command window here that the Oracle Universal Installer is starting up. Here we go. Now, some things to note about the Oracle Universal Installer. They do a really good job, Oracle does, as far as telling us, for instance, where we are in the process. You'll see on the left-hand side we have a guided navigation that shows us where we are. You also see step X of Y up here telling us we have 9 steps to get through. We're on step 1. First thing we're asked for is if we want to receive email notifications from Oracle, we can supply an email address. And if you've purchased a license for the software and you have an Oracle support contract, you're going to have a My Oracle Support account credential, an email address, and a password. And in order to receive security updates via My Oracle Support, you'll need to put that password in. Now, this answers a question that I'm sure many of you have, and that is, well, how does Oracle make any money if you can download their software for free? I mean, if we go back to the resources folder, I downloaded these zips just by creating a free Oracle account, agreeing to their licensing, which is key actually, and then downloading the zips. Well, the deal is with licensing is as follows. You are out of compliance if you're using the Oracle database in a production environment without paying for a license, you're doing something illegal, and Oracle could go after you for that if they find out. But number two, you're invariably going to run into support issues. And if you want Oracle's help, you will need to have legal software installed, server license, user license, and you'll have to have a support contract. So that, I think, is the best way to explain how Oracle makes their money, like any other software manufacturer, by selling licenses. In this demo environment, I'm going to uncheck this because we're not going to connect to my Oracle support at this point, and we'll click Next. If you don't have an internet connection, you'll receive a connection failed message, and if you just want to skip this and continue, we can select I want to remain uninformed of critical security issues and click Continue. Now, the installation options are to create an instance and configure a database, or just build an instance. You'll notice the little pop-up help that appears next to these choices. Oracle does a pretty good job of documenting the choices. Now, the reason why I'm going to choose the second option is that we're going to cover creating a database in a separate nugget. However, it makes sense for you in a production environment to create and configure a database which daisy chains the Oracle Universal Installer with the Database Configuration Assistant. Note that the third option is to upgrade an existing database. In step 3, we're asked for the type of database installation. Your choice here is a single instance, which gives you the single instance of Oracle software plus one database, or if you're in a real application clusters environment, you could go that route. With real application clustering, you have several instances of Oracle database software on separate machines, all focused on the same single database. It provides for high availability services. We're going to do single instance database installation here. Our product is going to run in the selected language, English. Now, you'll note that the download of the software gives you the choice at installation of what edition you want. And it tells us here a little description of what you get depending upon your choice: Enterprise, Standard, Standard Edition 1, or Personal Edition, also called Express Edition. If you choose Select Options, depending upon the edition that you choose, of course, Enterprise Edition is going to give you all of the available options. You can deselect components that you don't need. So if we're not going to partition tables, we don't need to worry about Oracle partitioning. If we're not doing data warehousing, at least at this point, we can disable the online analytical processing or OLAP components. If we don't need data mining, we don't need to select that. Here the point is least service. Any options that you don't need, turn them off to maximize the security of your system and to reduce its attack surface. Now, this course and your exams are going to presuppose the Enterprise Edition, which includes all of the features. So I'm going to keep that selected and choose Next. The installation location step is important because here we're specifying two crucial environment variables, and you know what those are, right? Oracle base, which is the base location, directory path location of all of your Oracle software. By default in Windows, that's going to be the root of your system drive, app, and then Oracle. Oracle, of course, is the name of the user who's engineering or in whose context we're running the installation, and it also makes sense because it's the name of the software, right? Software location, this is the Oracle home environment variable. You might be wondering, Tim, why are you harping so much on environment variables? The reason I am, friends, is because Oracle home in particular is referenced all over the place, and in your daily work as a DBA, you'll be making calls to Oracle home quite a bit, at least when you're initially setting up your environment. So you'll note here that the default path, which I'm not going to change, I'm going to leave this default, goes underneath the Oracle base, and then we have product 1120, which is our current version of Oracle database, and then there's the generic identifier dbhome_1. Now we can change that if we want to make it more friendly to our environment, but the idea, remember, is you could perhaps have multiple Oracle homes, multiple databases, only one of which would be attached to the instance at a time, of course. You might have under 11.2.0 a dbhome1 and a dbhome2 that give different databases for different purposes. So that having been said, we'll click Next. Now the Oracle Universal Installer is running prerequisite checks, looking at our system architecture, looking at our disk subsystem, systems. While that's running, let me mention again that if you're running Linux, you're going to see all of these same screens. The universal in Oracle Universal Installer means that this installation process is completely operating system agnostic. The only time specific OSs come into play are with things like directory paths. Obviously, Linux has a different directory structure than Windows does. Remember, I mentioned that you can save your installation as a response file to do an unattended installation of the database. At this point on the summary screen, and notice this occurs before we actually install, we can click Save Response File and give it a name. I'm going to call it Oracle Installation.rsp. I'll save it to my Documents folder, and that's going to allow us to choose all of these same settings and run OUI in an automated fashion. Note also that you could run the installer up to this point, save a response file, then bail out without actually installing the software. I'm going to choose Finish though, which takes us to the install process step, step 9 of 10, and this is where you just have to do two things. You have to wait patiently, and you also have to keep your fingers crossed that these steps, preparation, copy files, and setup files, will all have the succeeded progress state. If we want to see additional details, you can click the Details button, and what this is simply doing is echoing the contents of the installation log file. The Oracle Universal Installer is nice enough to give us the path to that file just so we know where it is. Alright, the installation of Oracle Database was successful. At this point, if we want to, we can open up the Services console and check out that the services are running. We have our instance itself installed, our background processes, our memory structures, but what we do not have yet is a database. And as I said, we'll cover that in an upcoming nugget. Preparing the database environment review. In this nugget, we examined planning requirements for deploying Oracle 11g database. I hope at this point you're familiar with those questions and you understand their ramifications. Things like minimum system requirements, being able to differentiate among the different versions of Oracle 11g, etc. We also covered installing the software. At this point, you should be very familiar with where to go to download that software, bring it down to your machine, and then of course using the Oracle OUI to lay down those binaries and understand the ramifications of your choices as you work through that utility. I hope that this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.